Maidens. 4 women that are the physical embodiment of the 4 seasons. They do not use dust, but rather their powers come from magic. Each maiden holds power over the vault to a specific relic. Knowledge for spring, destruction for summer, choice for fall, and creation for winter. Upon death, a maiden's powers gets passed to a new host. Either the person the current maiden thought of as she died, or if that person is male or otherwise ineligible, the power is distributed seemingly randomly. This system was bestowed upon the first maidens by a powerful wizard, and has been continuing for thousands of years. And it's broken. Maidens are such a non-element to the story. I like them conceptually. There's a theme of 4s in RWBY, and the maidens continue that in a way that felt genuine to the plot. But really, they've devolved into a MacGuffin that only exists to push the villains forward without any real sense of consequence. The villains want the relics, and so need the maidens. That makes the maidens a MacGuffin's MacGuffin. The only plot-relevant thing they need to do is open doors. You could have replaced them with keys and nothing would have changed. The only benefit to them being people over doorstops is now the show has an excuse for characters to die. It's been told and explained to us that maidens are forces of nature incarnate. They can wield the elements at their own will. But they really don't seem that strong? Amber got taken down by a small group of teens. Cinder seems to be constantly losing. Raven's most used feature is her bird shit, and that's completely unrelated to her being a maiden. It seems the intense power the maidens wield is just elements. But see, here's the thing. This is a world where everyone has a semblance. Maiden powers seem no different than if someone's semblance was weather control. Being able to make a big dumb sword out of fire or ice doesn't really hold a candle to absorbing electricity's power, blocking out pain, or controlling someone's mental state. Emerald is hands down more powerful than any of the maidens we've seen so far. Controlling the elements is simply an elaborate semblance, and a pretty boring one at that. This elemental power is touted as being special because it's magic. It's defined as such because it doesn't use dust. Here's the thing though, neither do semblances! Semblances have no rules to follow. There seems to be no limit on what a person's semblance can be. These magical feats are impossible to differentiate from just a semblance. There's a reason we all thought Crow's semblance was turning into a bird. It seems just as likely as getting stronger from damage or masking your emotions. Semblances in magic have no regulations and thus become indistinguishable. Characters are arbitrarily amazed by these magical feats, and it just doesn't make any sense because of the world they live in. Why is turning into a bird so surprising when Weiss can summon Grimm? To shift gears back to the maidens though, I have to ask, why are there even 4 of them? The answer is because we appointed each one to a season, but actually, why though? There appears to be no difference between each maiden's power. They all can do the same elemental shit, the only difference is just what door they can open. In the original world of Remnant that goes into the maidens, we see the girls using different elements. Winter had ice, spring had nature, summer had fire, and fall had wind, but that seems to have been retconned, as now all of them can do everything. Maybe it's because the writers realized they had just written the origin to an Avatar knockoff, or perhaps they just felt it was too limiting or basic for the girls to only have their season-appropriate elements. But I feel simply making them all identical in ability was a detriment. Let's say the spring and fall maidens both died at the same time. How could you tell which is which once you find the new maidens? The only real answer is have them touch a door. There's nothing to differentiate the maidens from each other. I used to think that at least the names or color palettes would be a hint, but that seems to be out the window. Raven only has red and black on her. Those aren't really spring colors, which means there's not even variety in character design between the maidens. Being the spring maiden versus being the fall maiden is literally no different, with the sole exception being which relic you can get. Speaking of relics, the allocation of relic to maidens also seems arbitrary. Why does winter get creation when most plant life dies during that season? Why does summer get destruction when that season also brings monsoons and the start of crops? Attributing more obtuse ideas like knowledge or choice to a season can easily become debunked or reasoned based upon opinion, but I'd like to look at the 2 maidens we know best so far and how they relate to their designated element. Spring gets knowledge. Raven certainly acts like she knows everything, and even referenced her thirst to know more in Known by its song. Raven honestly does seem pretty knowledgeable, and if that's what they were going for, I think she fits Spring's designated relic well. Fall is where things get interesting though. Fall gets choice, but it honestly seems to be more of a lack of choice that connects the 3 girls attributed to the season. Amber didn't have a choice when it came to who got her powers. They were stolen from her by Cinder. Pyrrha was obsessed with destiny, and only chose to take on the role of the Fall Maiden because she saw it as such. Cinder follows Salem's orders. She goes about a mission rather than gaining power by her own choices. The only choice Cinder seems to have made in relation to her season was to change her last name. I can't tell if this lack of choice is a theme or a coincidence, but if it continues, it'd be an intriguing way of going about this relic. However, these are only speculation, and honestly don't hold much weight since the relics were introduced in Volume 4, way after the Maidens. They feel like a recent addition to the canon, making all my hypotheses based around Volume 3 and prior unlikely to be connected to intent. It seems that the creators just decided to make the important fetch quest around a new thing, rather than keep the focus on the Maidens. Establishing Maidens in Volume 3 made a real impact on the plot and offered plenty of directions for the story to go, but they've just been pushed aside for a new thing that's gotten no explanation and has only affected the characters indirectly. Why introduce an important new element to your show, just to immediately introduce another new element into it to take over the first one's job? We need to find the Maidens. Got it. Actually, we need to find the relics now. How? With the Maidens, but it's really the relics we care about. Magic and dust are indistinguishable. Rather than fleshing out Remnant's lore or history, I feel it'd be most beneficial to lay down hard rules for semblances. Putting limitations on semblances would help to give actual magic the weight and unbelievability that all the characters act like it does. Maidens are useless. They're fancy keys with a second semblance that they all have to share. The only connections they have to their relics are based on theory alone. They're just something for the protagonist to find that can also die to add the facade of stakes to the show. I'd love to see the writers incorporate maidens in a way that gave them more agency in the plot and let them be more than elusive door touchers. Having the maidens differentiate themselves from each other with unique abilities would help to demonstrate their importance in the world and lore. Doing all this would help solidify the world of RWBY. With guidelines and rules to follow, I feel the writers would be able to keep Remnant feeling consistent. It would limit confusion on how the powers in the show work, while fleshing out the show's universe. And it would alleviate the problem of having special characters introduced that aren't actually important to the story.